once again, welcome. I'm not going to read our introductions again. I'm so sorry about that. But welcome everyone, and let's discuss some questions about advanced speaking proficiency. As soon as I can share. Now I don't see the share button here. Here we go. So we would like to talk about what programs we work with, the challenges that we face in advancing speaking proficiency, strategies, rubrics, and also connecting classroom instruction to real-world communication and professional needs. Should we start with the programs? Okay, as I mentioned, I teach for the Russian flagship program, which means that we have very specific goals that our students need to reach. Ideally, by the third level, our students need to reach at least advanced low proficiency. I think in their third year, they usually reach advanced mid proficiency. And by the end of the program, after their capstone year, they're supposed to reach superior. So superior is our goal, and that's what we strive for. Olga.
I teach at the DLI, Monterey Defense Language Institute, and the Department of Defense Threat Reduction Agency. We are teaching interpreters and translators, first of all. So the goal is 3+4. I would say ILR 4 is a unicorn among our students, but so the majority are aiming at 3 and coming out from the going to their profession with 3+ speaking proficiency and somewhere listening, reading comprehension from 3+ to 4.
Yulia.
All right, everyone, I'll go next. I also work at the Defense Language Institute, but I am actually in Washington, D.C., so I'm a DLI Washington. And we administer the contract foreign language training program, providing instruction for military linguists, defense attaché system personnel, and also foreign area officers for a variety of different languages. In fact, I think now we have anyway between 47 and 60 languages, and so Russian happens to be one of them. We also have some other Slavic languages like Ukrainian, Slovenian, Serbo-Croatian. The courses are highly intensive. They are 6 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And depending on the nature of the course, the goals may be different. The goals for speaking, it may be 2, it may be 2+, it just maybe 3. It just depends on a particular course that is offered. And just to give you a profile of our typical student, it would be someone who has had maybe 10 to 15 years professional experience beforehand, possibly with a family, possibly multilingual, educated traveler, and highly motivated and very curious as well. So briefly, that's the profile of our program.
I think I'm the only one left. Do you hear me fine? Sometimes people complain about my microphone. Just let me know usually if I get closer, that solves it. If at any point during the session I'm not audible. So I, as was mentioned in the bio, direct the Summer Language Institute. And prior to that, I have been the coordinator of the Russian program at the Summer Language Institute. Actually, since 2014, which is incredible because, like I said, if you were here at the beginning, I just turned 21 yesterday, so I don't know how I've been doing that since 2014. But so we have up to 11 languages now, which has increased over the years, but Russian has always been about half of our enrollment, and we're a relatively small and regionally focused institute. We focus on East European, Central European, and a couple of Near Eastern languages. So with Russian being half of our enrollment, that means about 50 students or so, with the total enrollment usually around 100. We had a bit of a spike during the pandemic when there were not a lot of other options for abroad, but overall our goal and typical years 100 students enrolled. In Russian, as of last year, we had through the first through fifth levels. So the highest level we had, we would test students in at advanced low and try to get them as high as we can in an 8-week program. Our program typically, though, is just a brief period. Unlike some of the colleagues at DLI, we don't get year-round access to them, or we don't get as much time as we want. We just get the 2 months with them, and try to improve their proficiency as much as we can before we send them home to their home universities, and then we try to keep in touch and find out what happens with them after that. But I would say a typical proficiency for some of our for the highly dedicated and talented students, we can get them 2 actual levels higher, usually even at those upper levels sometimes. So which is really a feat. So if they come in for advanced low, of course, the higher you go, as we know, the harder it is. But some of the advanced low students came out with advanced high. And that's especially in our 3rd year course, where they typically come in with intermediate mid, sometimes intermediate low or high. We usually get them 2 levels up in just the 2 months. And then we also have a cohort of ROTC students who do ILR testing, but they tend to join our program at the lower levels. This year, we're opening a new program that's going to be, if anyone in the room remembers, we used to have a 5+5, 5 weeks in Pittsburgh, followed by 5 weeks in Moscow. That shut down first with pandemic and then with the war. But we are finally going to be debuting our 5+5 Pitt plus Riga program this year, which is actually enrolled at the levels of the old Pitt from Moscow program. So we're really excited to get that off the ground.
Should we now talk about the challenges that our students face, that we face in teaching them?
I can start, but I can start following Katie. So Katie just mentioned that it's very difficult to move from one level to another if it is like higher levels. If it is advanced to superior, it takes not just a lot of time, energy, it also takes a lot of, I mean, like, first of all, it takes a lot of time. This is what students don't understand. So when they reach this plateau, it's very difficult to find motivation to go higher if you don't see the progress every day. So this is the first one. And also there are a lot of other problems in our program. I mean, like in terms of motivation to go higher. For example, we have heritage speakers, and a lot of them come to our program with the thought that they know the language. And this is, for them, it's very difficult to accept that they need to go higher. So they don't have enough level of Russian. They're native or their first language, and it's not enough for this profession. It's difficult to accept that some sentences that they thought they are true from the very beginning, and they are not enough. And some sentences like в Америке есть ядерное оружие is not enough for communicating for level ILR4 and for translating very official, for interpreting for very official situations. So it's kind of, and also we are talking, like I meet a lot of students who are on the level, like they meet the criteria, for example, if you were talking about intercultural communication, they on the level of accepting the differences, but not accepting the equality of cultures. So they still have the perspective to other languages or to the Russian from English speaking perspective as the different and weird culture. So this attitude really stops them in developing their proficiency in speaking, because, for example, they don't understand like the very like the nuances of being polite for level 4. And for example, like it's it's this situation when they stuck in their comfort zone and they don't want to go out of this comfort zone. For example, if they studied Russian in Russia or any Russian-speaking country before they immigrated to the US, for example, they went to school till the 6th class, level. Like 6th grade, and they came to our classroom with such expressions like "молодец," talking to other people and to teachers and to their colleagues, or something like the level of language which enough for colloquial conversation over the table with parents, but not very suitable for official situations, and so on. So to persuade them to leave this comfort zone, I think this is the major challenge in their development of their speaking skills.
I may echo what Olga just said. In our program, we have very similar issues. First, I would say some of the things that our students might have learned in other languages, which is the main goal, is to speak and to express your opinion and to express your thoughts. And it matters much less how you do this, becomes a problem at higher levels of proficiency because of the register, because of the vocabulary that they choose, and also just the fact that sometimes they feel like they answered the question, and that's the main goal. And we have to remind them before we conduct our mock OPIs and while we practice in class, that it's actually also about just being able to converse and keep up the conversation. Sometimes maybe it's even okay to wander onto a different topic from what you just started, as long as you keep the conversation going. And then another really serious issue that our most advanced students face is that they were taught in other classes. A lot of them are planning on being diplomats. And so for a lot of them, public speaking is something that they train professionally in. And one of the things that they clearly teach them in those courses in public speaking is to be personable, and as personable as possible, right? To engage the speaker, to give examples from your own experience, to keep this personal relationship with the speaker. Whereas when we're talking about OPI, one of the main criteria for getting a superior level is actually moving away from that self, right? And keeping it all hypothetical and not about yourself. And so this is something that we have to explicitly talk to our students about, because they get frustrated. They not never, but they don't get that superior that they think that they deserve. And sometimes I, as an interviewer, believe that my student actually believes that's superior, but I don't see the evidence of that during the mock OPI because the student talked about their personal experience a lot. So I would say that is one of the challenges that we have to face openly in our discussions with students, to make sure that they do end up receiving that superior, which we do believe that they deserve, but they have to give us evidence of that.
And I can just jump in here too. I think a lot of your challenges are very similar to the challenges that we have observed in the program here at DLI Washington. Also, a couple of things come to mind, and I think they have to do with how we assess students. And of course, assessment is so important in the program, as you can imagine, and the courses have very specific goals. But we can't just think about assessment. We also need to consider how we can help students develop confidence and really authentic linguistic competence. So confidence and competence. And how do we cultivate the freedom of expression while navigating these rigid structures of high stakes testing and assessment? Something that I have been thinking about quite a bit is since we are working with foreign area officers, and after completing the courses, they will be going on their assignments, a lot of them will be using the language that they're studying for speaking. So what kind of activities, what kind of specific activities can we offer to tailor our language courses to the FAO-specific language needs, with the goal of the improvement of their job assignment preparedness. And I know that this is going to be one of our topics that we're going to discuss also towards the end of our roundtable. But I think that that's probably the main challenges. And also, as I mentioned before, we offer a variety of different courses. That can be basic courses, that can be refresher courses, meaning a student may have studied Russian before 10, 12 years ago and is coming back to us, and we need to help bring up the language skills that once existed. And of course, we know that fossilization is it's real. At some point, it seems that language learners may stop developing their skills because they reached that certain threshold. But our goal is to help them go beyond that. And I would say that these are probably the main challenges that we have experienced, in my opinion.
I would echo a lot of the same comments that my colleagues have made. And I actually, before I forget, wanted to ask a question for when I finished speaking. Olga and others mentioned the question of kind of like motivation. I was just curious for your DLI students who are becoming interpreters or other official, like language professionals in official capacities, whether they are typically assigned to learn Russian or whether they have chosen it of their own volition, if you wouldn't mind addressing that when I'm finished. But my program differs a little bit, I think, from certainly Julia's and Olga's, because the students are all opting in. Like, we don't have anybody who was assigned by a boss or by commander to come and learn for a specific, kind of national security purpose. Though some of them might have those aims. We do have students who aspire to that, but they're all opting in. So I don't think motivation, at least for the 2 months that we have them at the upper levels, is not usually a problem. If they sign up for our intensive program at those upper levels, then they're ready to do the work, and they have really, really great attitudes and a lot of, I would say, stick-to-itness to them. But some of the comments that have been already made, I do see reflected specifically in terms of cultural competence and the cultural expectation around register. I do think there is a difference in this respect, in that in in American English, you can get away with almost anything using an intermediate or a lower advanced language register. If you notice, listening to some of the discourse from politicians, for example, the structural changes, the grammatical requirements, and even like the vocabulary required, in my opinion, of course, we have wonderful speakers in English, but there is no cultural understanding of like that shift that we feel and that we're taught to feel as testers of the OPI, whether ILR or ACTFL. I'm not talking professional users of English necessarily, but like when the kids come to the programs, I don't know about your programs, but a lot of times they're like college age, and they don't even in English have a concept that there is like this sort of cumulative shift or holistic shift in the entire like language as an entity, and this idea of language register. So if they don't have that idea in even English, that there's this shift that happens based on communicative context, that's kind of a double challenge. There's nothing to base this instruction that they're getting on. And then I would say also to echo the comments earlier, when Olga, when you there we go with the language register, Olga Mukhortova, when you or should I say Dr. Mukhortova, when you mentioned в Америке есть ядерное оружие. So I think that in general, this idea that they have the feeling and they have properly been trained in the communicative method that you've gotten your message across, you've had an act of self-expression, hooray, celebrate, you know? And for good reason in the lower levels, we kind of celebrate that because that's what the lower level OPIs are looking. So I do find the students in those upper levels to get a little bit surprised, frustrated, and disappointed about the fact that they had all these means of expression that are somewhat useless now, and they need to replace yeast or nothing with yevляется, or and in Russian there's so many of those examples. I don't know that in English we have equivalencies in oral speech for that number of kind of replacement lexicon or language structure that has to happen in the register shift to the official speech context. And then, since I specialize in pronunciation, I wanted to say a final comment, and I can expand on it later, that I have last spring piloted my pronunciation and listening comprehension course. It's a 1-credit add-on during our academic year program, so it's not during our intensive. And I'm repeating it this year, and I've had 4th-year students both years, and my 4th-year students in the pronunciation course are shocked that even some of our strongest students who do have advanced level OPI scores on record realize they can't even use intonation to reliably show the difference between, for example, a statement and a question without a question word. So there's some simple things that, in my opinion, because the pedagogy has in recent decades really gone so far away from explicit phonics and phonetics training, that they have to, if they want to get something, for example, a 4, they need to go do some remedial work to make themselves, I hate to say it, but more native-like in their speech. Otherwise, they're never going to quite have the nuance and pronunciation that they would need for an ILR 4, and they're also never going to have the self-confidence because they can intuit the fact that even though they're trying to speak to imitate what they're hearing, and they're trying to speak with all the rules of phonetics that they've learned, they just don't have the tools to execute that because they haven't had the explicit instruction on what are the important sounds in Russian versus the important sounds in English or whatever their L1 is. And if somebody could, Olga or Julia, if you could let us know, are the students sent to you or do they opt into your programs?
I mean, we have different programs, so we can comment on both of them, I think. Yulia?
I can jump in here. Our students, the ones who come to us to study Russian, are usually, I don't know exactly if they have selected Russian themselves. If they're refresher students, these can go back in time 10, 15 years ago when they first studied Russian in their maybe basic training in Monterey. So if they're refresher students and they're coming back to us to study or refresh their Russian, chances are they have chosen to go abroad and work in a capacity of foreign area officer or defense attaché. So it is their choice because it is, a tour of duty, and they will be relocating to go abroad to work in this particular capacity. But I know that in Monterey, it's different. Olga, I don't know how it is in your program at DITRA.
Yeah, in our program, we have recruiters. I mean, not we, at the course, the DITRA is an agency. They have recruiters, and they go through the most advanced students through the Army, Navy, and all the branches, and record students who would like to change their profession into interpreting, because they have the first profession, their military profession, and they're changing. So the goal right now is to talk about this change with native speakers too, heritage speakers, and English with English native speakers. And so first of all, if it is English native speakers, so the history goes back maybe 10 years. And sometimes we know, sometimes we don't know. But the last class that we graduated, for example, we had one English speaker there, and he chose his major in I don't remember what university, but he has chosen the university, like BA, and then he traveled to study in Kursk for 2-year master program, and then back, and then they sign up for the army assignments. So it's like very long way to this program, and a lot of students just go through basic course, and then they can choose. So Russian can be their priority, but sometimes not. But okay, so this is very important thing, and it was written like about 10-15 years ago. It was the research started by Betty Luliver in DLI in Ditra. She started researching motivation of motivating factors of people who reach IELTS for proficiency. And the main outcome of this research is the motivation should be combined from personal and professional. Usually people are stuck on intermediate high or advanced low if they have only personal priorities. So if they are not using it for profession, they just don't have time to develop their the proficiency higher. But if they combine the personal professional sides of motivation, so they reach the best results.
Olga, and you probably have somewhat similar situations with students, and I don't know if it is true or not, students who, for example, have learned Ukrainian before, and now they are relanguaged, so to say, to Russian, right? Or they may have studied another Slavic language, and now there is a need for Russian, so they are learning Russian, having previously learned another Slavic language. So that's something
we have so many stories. So, for example, they went to basic training for Chinese. Like 10 years ago, they served as Chinese linguists, and then they had to relanguage, but their heritage language is Russian. So hello, now the students know like 3, 4, 5 languages at this time, and this is professional level. That's wonderful stories. For example, like we had students from who started with so native speakers of Spanish and Portuguese, and then he had to be he studied Japanese and worked as an interpreter of Japanese, and then he had to language into Russian and reach the proficiency of like 2+2+2. Yeah,
it's very similar, and I always found the term relanguaged very interesting. It's not like you're adding an additional language to your repertoire of languages, you're being relanguaged into another language. So I think that's quite remarkable.
Should we proceed to strategies? I feel like we somewhat mentioned this already, but Olga, would you like to start? Olga?
I can start with reading comprehension, because usually what we are doing, we're teaching 4 skills at once, 4 not writing, but speaking, reading, listening, and interpreting. And so what really motivates people to speak is text that create the moment of wow, or something like the crisis in their worldview. It's exactly the point and moment that is described in transformational teaching strategies. So they need to face the question that they can solve only from the new worldview. For example, the understanding of like the always what works for me in my classes is simple questions. Could you please describe the difference between the word народ, население, люди, русские и американцы? And here they started to think about the very similar, at the same time, very different things. And they found the ideas of ethnicity and nationality that was invented in after the French Revolution, and население, the word is that was invented in 19th century by Max Weber, and the different relationship between people and the state. And that what creates the moment of understanding the different picture, the different worldview. And for example, the understanding or the question about, okay, do you think that the language and ethnicity are the same or different? How do these things relate to each other? And this kind of very simple question puts them for like weeks into the state of wondering, okay, what is the correct answer? They are still looking for the correct one answer. And but this process of inner work is very fruitful in terms of like in 3-4 weeks, they accept more vocabulary, they're using more higher level vocabulary, low frequency, and they are using terms from the readings, because I offer the readings that can explain this difference, and they can advance their understanding of the ideas, concept, values, which is what like I'm aiming for. So if we are talking about ILR 4, it's concepts, ideas, and values, right? And so what I usually suggest how to approach these questions is to have the point of view a researcher, and researcher figure is like, which is different. Like for me, I define the ILR speaker as a researcher in opposition to, for example, now I learned too as a reporter, news reporter. What the difference? The difference that researcher has a distance between their own opinion and the object of research, and the researcher should collect all the approaches to this to the object of their research. And that's so the introductory sentences comes in help. For example, like on the one hand, on the с одной стороны, с другой стороны. So they are trying to get used to this difference in perspective, minimum to perspective to the object of their research. And this is the beginning of like this the moment of surprise and удивление, да, вот это вот transformational state of mind. This is very motivating for students, and that's why they collect more language material to express their new way of thoughts.
I'll be happy to jump in. I've had some success with incorporating methods that allow the students to take control over the selection of topics and even like kind of the conduct of the class meetings in my fourth year classes, which for our fourth year, I oversee the programs in the summer, but I teach during the academic year. So the students are, we get much less time with them in the academic year than in the intensive summer program. But we have a range of students, usually from intermediate mid up to advanced low, I would say, in our fourth year class. Sometimes intermediate low, because you know how it goes with the students and their majors. Not everyone is progressing at the same pace, of course. But a specific strategy that I've incorporated that has helped with motivation and retention of both vocabulary and grammar at the upper levels for our program is to have, within parameters that I establish and explain in class and in the homework, have them actually select short articles of media, put the links in a blog, and then do a little write-up in Russian for homework, like weekly homework, of why they were interested in this article, and already prepare a glossary of like 5 or 6 words. So this would be for a 50-minute meeting, and we wouldn't even spend the whole meeting. We would spend like the first half of the meeting with that. And then what I did in my fourth year classes the past couple times is I would go through the blog every week and pick 2 articles, and I would fix their write-up. So if they had a mistranslation or if they had some problems with what they had written, I would fix it up and create a handout. So a new handout every week, which seems like a lot of work, but it wasn't that bad at all because again, I think a lot of our class prep, as we all know, a lot of time is spent just searching for appropriate materials on the theme of the unit, and the students already do that for you here. So it's kind of nice that way. And I'll create a handout and then have the student introduce the lesson. I'll warn them the night before, we're going to be talking about your article and your article. Have the student introduce. They've already prepared at home because they wrote up the paragraph about why they selected it, but then they have the opportunity orally to present that. And then we'll have some kind of exercises based around that, where a lot of times I will also underline or highlight, if we're working on participles, I'll highlight the participles, and those are the participles that we'll review or teach the participles with. Or if we're working on whatever the topic is, I'll be able to highlight those language features and also establish for them the patterns of what are these forms, constructions, vocabulary that appear in official language all the time that they really have not met in their first 3 years of study at all. And then we'll always also engage in a little bit of a guessing game where I'll highlight some words that were not in the students list, but that I think they can guess based on context. And then we'll discuss what we think the words are, and then just for a few minutes and then reveal it. So I found it to be pretty effective and got really good feedback from the students. I also had a student the first year I tried this kind of, what would you call it, structure for the activity. I had actually our coordinator from our less commonly taught language program who said that she had always been puzzling with the upper level teachers for all her languages, of which there's, I don't know, more than a dozen in her center, and had brought them this model, and they've now been working with it, and it's helped a lot with that. So I think anything you can really do to make the students feel like they have some ownership over how time is being spent in class really helps. Colleagues, of course, debates is another good way to do this, that some of our upper level students talk about, upper level instructors speak about a lot. And then, of course, presentations. And when I use this model of like student selected media or like newspaper articles for becoming the class content, lots of times I try to have formal presentations that arise out of those topics. So when it comes time to choose your topic, basically we're continuing to have some kind of scaffolding that makes them feel like this class was something of their own creation. Because I think not just in language teaching, but in any kind of like serious study and high level study of any topic under the sun, making people feel like they have volition in the process is just an irreplaceable kind of motivating factor, I think.
I may follow up because I think there's a lot of overlap in what we do. And I do agree that a lot of it is about giving students something to work with. I think choosing the topics that are interesting to our students is probably key to keeping them motivated. And at an upper level course, hopefully at an upper level, we have the ability to kind of tweak what we teach, and that's one of the reasons why we have a modular system for the I'd say last 2 if not 3 courses that our students take, and so the modules that we pick are usually the ones that are relevant to what our students going to do in the future, and that's why there's a lot of discussion of politics and cultural questions like protest art, and just generally speaking about media literacy, and just kind of pushing them to talk about these global issues that are unavoidable in pretty much any kind of future conversation, professional conversation that they will have. And so giving them the option of, not the option, kind of pushing them to speak about these topics and speaking about these topics in a polite and culturally sensitive way is very important. We ask our students to present the news. I really like Kathleen's method of doing it. We haven't done that yet. Our students just prepare some news item that they picked. So that's where their agency comes from. They're the ones who choose it. And some students pick political news, some students go towards art and things like that. But they still need to present it in a way that on the one hand our other students understand, on the other hand it does justice to the material. Another thing we do is these presentations based on analyzing either a music piece or a painting or something else in the arts, where the students get to choose the object that they're analyzing, but also it's not, we're kind of taking a topic that we kind of start out with in the first or the second year, either music or movie or something like that, right? We talk about all of this, but now they need to actually present an analysis of it. Then they need to present the story. They need to, if we're talking about movies, then it has to be kind of like a review. And the first thing we do is we analyze a whole bunch of reviews that were written by professional critics, and we discuss what are the elements of a good review and things like that. So we're taking the materials from earlier courses, but we're taking them up a notch, and we're asking the students to do something on a much more professional level, and then they have to present it orally, right? So there's also scaffolding there. We're building on the topic that they already know, then we're adding some very specific vocabulary and skills, and then after that we ask them to speak about it. So when we talk about working on their speaking skills, I think we need to talk about the difference between something that is a prepared presentation and then also spontaneous speech. And for spontaneous speech, one of the things that I do, and it's usually the end of the semester, where maybe even the last 2 classes when we have some time, I give them these topics that I'm gonna share with everyone in the chat now. These are just discussion topics, and I like these because they give lots and lots to speak about. And for the students who are not yet at the advanced level, they could pick quite a few from this list that they could discuss on the intermediate high level, but they're all deep enough to be able to kind of push the students to that advanced and advanced high level of discussion. And the students really, really enjoy having these conversations. And sometimes if I have the time, I would just dedicate the whole class to these questions, and then I would keep rotating the pairs in which the students do this, and they seem to really enjoy it because, you know, at this point they're friends, but they're also sharing stories that are somewhat personal. It gets them to self-reflect and speak spontaneously. So these would be my few ideas.
I think so many great ideas have already been mentioned. I just would like to comment on a couple of things. So Kathleen mentioned debates, and also in my teaching and back in Monterey, I've used debates quite a bit in my own classroom with the students. I think it's a wonderful way, great opportunity to enhance speaking proficiency, and also for our students here at DLI Washington, since a lot of them are going on a fail type defense attaché assignments, where they may be using their foreign language, or Russian in this case, for various professional duties. They may be stating opinions, defending policy, conducting meetings and briefings, and possibly monologues, presentations. So it seems that the debate is such a wonderful tool to enhance their speaking proficiency. Of course, everybody knows what a debate is, but in a debate, arguments are put forward for opposing viewpoints. And I think the ideal way to, or there are multiple ways to organize it, but in my own experience, I think it's good to keep it structured and set very specific goals, have a set framework, in addition to everything that has already been said about debates, they can also help to build intercultural competence by encouraging our students to explore other perspectives and consider different points of view, and gain kind of an insider's perspective on another issue or possibly another culture. And also it gives them an opportunity to reflect on their own culture and their own cultural practices. The other plus, I think, to a debate is that it's such a great opportunity to review various useful expressions, such as stating the issue, for example, давайте определимся с проблемой, с главной проблемой сначала, or presenting the most important point of view, с моей точки зрения, самое главное, я убежден или я убеждена, concluding statements, using expressions such as в конце концов, я хотел подчеркнуть в качестве заключительного слова, позвольте мне и так далее, and so on and so forth. But I think the key here is, as I mentioned before, to keep it structured, to prepare for a debate accordingly. And I have received a lot of great feedback from the students in my own experience. I would usually try to collect their feedback after the event. And I don't know if I'm able to find their comments right now. I'll try to see if, yes, here they are. Just a couple of quotes. It was a lot of fun. It was very engaging. It encouraged participation the entire time because you had to be ready to counter something someone said before you. So a lot of positive comments. And again, if we talk about ILR topics, appropriate for our advanced students, I mean, you could pick various potential topics for debate, such as technology, education. I remember during COVID, one of the topics for our debates was students were debating whether virtual instruction or traditional teaching present better opportunities for learning a foreign language or learning in general. Students enjoy topics related to health, for instance. Students can debate whether fast food should be banned or if animal testing should be banned. I mean, you can get really, really creative. And of course, most recently, we talk a lot about AI and AI impact on society. So what kind of impact does artificial intelligence have on our society? So I think that debates offer so many great opportunities, and certainly going forward, we can explore other ways how they can be used in class. The good thing is that you can use it in a bigger class, you can use it in a smaller class, depending on how you decide to structure your debate. So it's very flexible. And then maybe just another thing that I wanted to mention is also an activity that we find very useful, and this is immersions. So we take students on various immersions, and you can imagine that in Washington, D.C., there are a lot of places one can visit. But again, it doesn't have to be in the capital city. It can be done anywhere you are. But it really provides students with a lot of opportunities to practice language and to be immersed in, particular culture, language, and one of the really popular immersions and field trips that we have recently had was a trip to Hillwood Museum in Washington, D.C., which is known for its decorative arts collection that focuses on the House of Romanov, and I believe there are even some Fabergé eggs there. So we don't just take students there and show them around. There are always assignments, pre-immersion or pre-field trip and post-field trip. Students can deliver presentations about what they have learned during the event. And a lot of times, if we have students from a variety of classes who are, for example, studying Russian, you can use differentiated instruction and adjust the presentations that they deliver after the event based on the level of a particular student. So again, I think here it's very important to have clear goals and objectives when taking students on an immersion or organizing an immersion or taking them on a field trip. But again, that was something that was highly useful for developing their speaking skills.
Can I jump on the topic of debates? And like I totally agree with you about the usefulness of debates, and it's just impossible over to do what to tell a lot of things of debates, but I found one limitation. And this is not me, the students told me, okay, we have debates and we have roundtables. And during the debates, they need to prove that they are right. And they need to prove that they are right and their personal opinion, right? It's like, я высказывание. And their point of view is the right one. During the roundtables, they need to observe all the multiplicity of point of views and acknowledge everyone, especially if you're leading the roundtable. So, and this is the conflict between я and мы, the conflict between one correct and only one useful approach to the problem versus we have the multiplicity of them and we need to acknowledge. And what we are aiming for, it's the roundtable situation in which you are not telling your partner in a conversation, you are not right. No, you need to acknowledge, okay, you are right and I'm right and we are all right. And we're like just eliminating the word right. Okay, I see you, I hear you, I understand your arguments. Thank you very much that you shared your opinion with me. And this is, I think this is very important for intercultural communication and especially for interpreters. And because they connect to different viewpoints. And for developing this intercultural understanding and exception, it's not even exceptions. You know, you see the students always ask the same question. Okay, if I do not agree with this point, or if I don't like their current politics, how can I accept and say they are right? And so my answer is always, you don't need to say that they are right. Just don't use this word. There is no the word right or wrong. The word I see you, I hear you. This is the very different approach to this conversation. Yeah.
Olga, I'd like to follow up a little bit on that, because on the one hand, I agree that there is a lot of value, especially interculturally, in learning how to express your, not even exactly agreement or disagreement, but just how to react to something that somebody else says. But I would say that there's also value to debates in the sense that, first of all, I don't think my students use the word I, right? They're pre-assigned a point of view, and their assignment is to find as many arguments, ideally, you know, statistics and other factual ideas beforehand. This is their prep. The other positive element about debates, I think, is that they need to sit down and they actually do need to think of what the other point of view might, or what their arguments might be, and they need to find those counter arguments. So I think the benefit of debates is that it actually pushes you to think at a higher level than you would if you're just emotionally having a conversation with someone, right? Yeah. So there's the value of that if we're trying to push them to that superior conversation, I think.
I think you're right. Absolutely right, because we have a different assignment for debates. They need to prove that their argument is the only one.
Mm-hmm. We had a question in the chat. I'm not sure everyone saw this, but we were asked to also address heritage speakers. What do you ladies do in your programs to address that? One thought that I had was, if we're talking about heritage speakers who have a lot of who have a higher level of proficiency, one thing we could do for them is to give them more agency and maybe let them teach part of the lesson if that is something that they have maybe family or heritage expertise in. So that's something that I use sometimes, let them teach a class or a part of a class if that is something that they can bring value to. That gives them the feeling of, you know, self-worth, I guess. Any other thoughts?
I could probably just add that I think heritage speakers are a great resource, depending on what it is that we are doing in class. But if we're talking about various cultural aspects, and they may have been previously experienced to, I don't know, Russian cuisine or something. Maybe they had a grandma who, or have a grandma who cooks for them and knows a lot about regional cuisine. So I would usually refer to them and ask, well, is this something that you have tried? And they're usually really excited to share what they know about a particular cultural topic, for example. So kind of using them as I don't want to say subject matter experts, unless I don't want to make them uncomfortable, certainly. But if they are willing to share, that's certainly something that is welcome in my classes. And asking them to give presentations, that's something that has already been mentioned as well. So certainly their needs may be different, quite different, but it does not, you know, make the class go one way or another. I think it's very common to have heritage speakers in our classes, and they are wonderful resources for other students as well.
We have heritage students in our classes on a regular basis, and it makes learning much more personal, and they can share their family history stories and clarify that, for example, if they are from Yakutia, it doesn't mean that they are Russian by ethnicity, and it creates the understanding, like more like deeper understanding what is language is, because it also it put the Russian language in the perspective with together with French, Spanish, English as the post-colonial languages, the languages that serve a lot of communities. And also, if we are talking about Jewish population and Jewish heritage speakers, I mean, speakers of Russian that identify themselves as Jewish, it's also very useful because they can talk in Russian about different cultures and like different cultural traditions and distinguish their culture and talk in Russian about things that are not reachable in other languages from the personal point of view. It creates not just knowledge, but the atmosphere of sharing in Russian, which is very important.
And I just would like to agree with,
Go ahead.
Just a very quick comment based on what Olga just said. I think if you're teaching a small class and let's say you have a lot of heritage speakers and there is some kind of a final project at the end of the course, it could be really useful to ask them to conduct an interview with, I don't know, maybe their relative and find out about their family history, again, depending on the particular class and the particular student, but actually encourage them to dive deeper and then share this information if they feel comfortable doing so with the class. I think that it makes it very, very personal, and it allows them to learn more about their own cultural history and share it out with the rest of the class.
I was just going to add, I do not want to open the can of worms of the additional challenges of having heritage speakers, because then we won't make it to the next session. But just one additional challenge in how I try to combat it is having just actually in being in the midst of doing spring OPIs with our students, I've noticed that there are heritage speakers in the program where they start at advanced low when they come in to whatever level they're placed in, and then they stay at advanced low. And I think when Olga got us started at the beginning, it was this question of fossilized language and like lack of understanding of context. This isn't a program, again, not where they're training interpreters, but just here I'm speaking more about our 4-year program. And what I've found is making sure to expose them to higher level speech and draw their attention to the forms that they may not even understand in that speech, because we have, when we are speaking our heritage or our native language, a language that we feel like we have comprehensive competence in, our minds actually just filter out what we don't understand, but we don't have that same adrenaline reaction or embarrassment reaction. Like if I hear someone say an English word that I don't understand or use an English phrase, I just say, whatever. As a native speaker or L1 speaker, am not going to be like, oh, write it down and learn that in English, because it doesn't touch my ego the same way it does when I hear something in Russian that I'm like, whoa, I've been studying Russian now for 25 years. Wait, I'm only 21. But however many years I've been studying Russian, and why haven't I heard that? Like I have, nowadays, of course, I'm maybe the only of the 4 of us who's non-native speaker of Russian. So like, when I hear something that I've never noticed before, and then I have a native speaking spouse, I'll be like, how come I haven't heard that? Is that like a really rare thing? I'd be like, it's pretty common. And I'd be like, what? But I'm not going to have that reaction in English, even if there's a common English thing that I don't know, because I just have that kind of internal self-confidence in English. So unfortunately, I think breaking their confidence can be a little bit of something that with kindness, but showing them that there are upper levels and that they, think of themselves as native speakers and as educated native speakers, but there is this other huge skill set that they actually need to learn to do. So, and, with kindness, obviously, but that's worked for me. And what I should say, I have 3 heritage speakers in my phonetics class, and we do self-assessments where I bring, examples of speech, and this is for all levels. So I have first through 4th year and heritage speakers as well who don't even take classes, and they'll listen to like a 30-second clip of speech, and on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 is like, this doesn't sound like language to me at all, it's just gobbledygook, or 10 is like, I'm confident that I understood it in all of its nuances. And then give them something like Dmitry Bykov or like whatever, public intellectual, and say, rate yourself honestly. How well do you think? And then that can just like kind of bring them the awareness that they indeed, they to an extent need, if they're going to be aiming for the advanced levels that are the topic today, they need to be approaching it with a lot of the same attitude as somebody who doesn't have that heritage to rely on.
So we have about 25 minutes left, and we have rubrics, and we have teaching, connecting classroom instruction to real world communication. Would you like to start any of those? Olga, I believe you wanted to share rubrics with us.
Rubrics and yes, so rubrics work well for me for my speaking class. So I made rubrics out of ILR scale descriptions. Why? Because I believe that for full professional proficiency, they need to understand what they are doing and evaluate their own language level of language. Because the situation when they're only person in the room that can and their language is the highest, they need to be sure that their work is done and done by like the best way possible. So they need to have personal awareness of what level of professional language they are speaking. That's why they need to and consciously approach proficiency criteria. So that's why I train them to understand the difference between 2, 3, 4. And not through like descriptors, but giving them models of, okay, this sounds like 2, this sounds like 3, this sounds like 4. And what I have done is like I can share the descriptions, but it's like I can. Okay, so I can talk about them. So this is the structure. Structure includes the thesis with 2 or 3 supporting arguments. Every argument should be introduced with an introductory sentence, not a word. It's not like the level во-первых, во-вторых, в-третьих. So it's the level of анализируя этот вопрос с одной стороны или рассматривая эту проблему с другой стороны и подводя итоги такому анализу, необходимо отметить, что introductory sentences, rhetorical devices like metaphors, quotes, definitely quotes with this reliable source. For example, like, I don't know, starting something, talking about the social issues. My suggestion always go to Aristotle. Аристотель, человек, животное социальное или существо социальное, да, goes with every social issue, absolutely. Something like this, so they need to quote somebody and definitely show the source. And what else? I think this is it. So they need to construct the list of criteria in their first, and then compare this criteria or use this criteria to build the future answer. So they need the statement and 2 sides of this problem and conclusion. So it's kind of the form that they need to fill in. And why it's helpful, because this schemata can contain just every problem. Because we state the problem, this is 2-way solution, this is the conclusion. And before describing this problem, we can put metaphor, quote, or we can use terms specific to this issue. And I usually ask them to learn how to make rhetorical questions, because it and rephrase the question of the interlocutor. So this is how it works. And the problems that heritage and Russian speakers meet is the structure, first of all. So, and this is cultural differences. If it is an English native speaker, they are used to structure from the very beginning in their school education. They go through 5 paragraph essay structure, and they know what is an argument and what is thesis. And I like, it's not the knowledge that I can explain it. No, it's like ingrained understanding, and they can use the thesis and distinguish between thesis and argument and conclusion. So the problem with the structure for native and heritage speakers is also connected first to the lack of this ingrained knowledge, like internalized knowledge of the structure, but second is the tradition of what does it mean to speak, I don't know, what is the speech of very educated native speaker? Like, have you ever noticed like the speech of Dmitry Bykov or any like public intellectual, intelligent, how intelligentsia speaks, right? They don't have structure at all. We are not taught how to structure, because it's not in the tradition. And these Euler requirements, they go against everything that is learned how high register Russian speech, especially after the Soviet Union. Okay, so what is like Cindy Martin wrote an article in 2010. It's the problems, like why not the problems. It was about non-native speaker of English and their proficiency testing, why they don't why they often have high levels of proficiency, because they cannot sustain the level. And I was thinking about the level 4, they cannot sustain the level 4. And I was thinking and analyzing every single video of public intellectuals since then, and they don't do it. It's not in the structure of cultural culture, like highly educated native speaker, because the sustained level is the marker of речей Советского Союза и вот, you know, the speeches of генеральный секретарь Советского Союза Брежнев, да? So this is sustained level of 4. And this is the recipe of how to put people asleep in like 2 seconds. That's exactly the normal, like not normal, like the norms of this tradition. What makes the highly educated person more attractive and more culturally, I don't know, we look at these people how like in more entertaining way. So they need not just deliver some ideas, they need to be a kind of entertainers. Look at Schulman, look at somebody like, I don't know, Drabushevsky, right? They are jumping from register to register like every 30 seconds and keep our attention alive. And like it's possible to watch them for like hours. Why? Because they are jumping from 2 to 4 and like sometimes it's purely colloquial, or you know, also the the example that Саша Шапиро вчера, да, мы обсуждали, that интеллигенция может ругаться матом искусно, да, вот эти
Yeah,
вот.
I would say this was the first thing that I learned talking to I went to a kind of, I don't want to call it posh, it was a very intelligentsia school. It was the kids of like the high echelon of intelligentsia in Moscow. And our teachers were also people from, you know, Moscow State and all these other universities. Once I started communicating to them, once I graduated, I heard more swear words than I have going to like the village store where a drunkard would be giving speeches in mat right outside it. But I've heard more of it from these highly intelligent, very, very well-educated people who I admire so much. And I've actually, that's one of the reasons why I've decided to teach a course on Russian culture through this taboo language, because I realized that our students don't understand that it's a language of its own. And it does not only belong to the people who they would think, you know, gopniki and so on. It actually, there's a whole subsection of it that belongs to intelligentsia. Yeah, so I second that.
Returning to rubrics, it doesn't go together with rubrics, it goes against rubrics. And if we are talking about heritage speakers that are familiar with this cultural tradition, they don't believe the rubrics. I mean, these rubrics are made not for native speakers.
But that also might be why native speakers don't always get course, right?
Of course, yes.
I think that just shows some of the limitations of the testing, though, because we're having to make value judgments about identities as a part of the testing. It's almost impossible not to, because I would say this experience that you shared, Alexandra, which is possible in English too. Olga would know from studying at Pitt, for example, that we can have high intellectuals who choose to use taboo language or inappropriate forms or very low-level forms of speech. But when it's a native speaker when it is a native speaker with a highly educated native speaker who we trust has the ability to speak in whatever level they want, it's a subversive act for them to use that kind of language, and it's recognized by their interlocutors, other native interlocutors with that level of education as being a choice. When, for example, heritage speakers do it, we as testers don't recognize that as a choice, whether correctly or incorrectly, but usually correctly. And I have given, for example, OPIs I remember someone who was, had with very little formal education gone and hung out with expats and learned a very fluent level of Russian and lots of vocabulary, but was using the filler word "nalbe" with me throughout the interview. And of course I said, well, he can talk about anything, but it's intermediate high, because like he doesn't understand that what he's doing is inappropriate. And I think I was right in that judgment, but who knows? Maybe he was being subversive. I doubt it. But, so like, I think those judgments about identity, and I think Cynthia talked about it in the article you're citing, Olga, that those questions of identity, it's just forever going to be a shortcoming of the test, because we can't really know someone's history and what choices are being made in their mind in a 30-minute or an hour long test, depending on the format,
Yeah, and you just mentioned that it shows the limitation of the testing, and this is the very big question for native Russian speakers in our program, because they know that they know the language, and they are debating with the grades, but they escape or they exit from the situation. I'm trying to tell them that this testing goes first of all for their professional skills, not personal knowledge of Russian. So this is their professional skills. Okay, by work you need to do this, this, in this, in this language. It doesn't have anything personal with you. If we if it is possible. I mean, it's very difficult for them because it's their first language. And if we talk about this test has nothing personal with you as a person. Yeah, and it's just profession, and you sign the contract to serve your country. So this is the requirements. It kind of resolved the situation.
We have 9
I
minutes
found
left.
just in, oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask if we
very
want to try
quickly.
and speak about the professional approach, or if we want to open everything up to questions, if there are questions. But Kathleen, go ahead and.
I was just going to add one extra thing that's an extension of what Olga was just speaking about. Even since we're doing OPIs right now, it's helped me with some of the students who are really perfectionists or just high achievers and are used to getting good grades. And if they don't get the result they want, it helps for me a lot to tell them, look, what's being rated is the speech sample. It's not you. And even if the speech sample is a good example of what they're capable of at that moment, that's really helped me to get the students to calm down about the test itself. And with heritage speakers, I haven't tried that with heritage speakers as much, but I can imagine just telling them that we know what you're capable of, but you still got to come here and demonstrate it every time, like every test is a new test, and you need to perform at level for the very short, really 30 minutes to an hour that we have with you. Just show us what you can do, and nobody's bringing their assumptions about your identity to the test each time. So to disassociate it a little bit from all those identity questions.
If I might just add one more thing, since we're talking about OPI, I found that, and again, this is something that I have never thought about before I arrived here at DLI Washington. Somehow for our foreign area officers, when they go and they get tested, when they have their OPI exam, a lot of times when they are interrupted during the test, they may take it personally, believe it or not. This is not something that I have experienced when I was back in Monterey with our basic course students, but this has become, I don't want to say a pattern. It happened a few times though. and not only with the students who are studying Russian, but students studying other languages as well. So I remember at some point a few years ago, I would tell students, well, you know, you're going to have your OPI. This is your opportunity to shine and show off what you have acquired during this year, during your basic course. But then I thought that we shouldn't tell students that, because even if it is their opportunity to shine, they still have to keep in mind that it is a test and they need to produce language samples, right? And that's how they're going to be tested. So it's okay if you're interrupted. It doesn't show that the tester is being disrespectful or that you're doing a poor job. It just means that they were able to collect enough language to move on to the next topic or to the next task. So I think something to keep in mind when we prepare our students for OPI, and when we say, oh, you're going to have a mock OPI, maybe it's best not to say mock OPI, but just say you're going to have a practice speaking, I don't know, hour, or just call it something else. Because a lot of times teachers, when they practice with students before their OPI, they still try to be nice to them. They don't like to interrupt them. But in real world, they will get interrupted. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, especially for the higher levels, because the tester should be aware that it is not memorized material. Even for like the level of, if they are talking about dissertation or something, because you see, if you're talking about it like 10 times per, I don't know, for like per month, 10 times per month, it can be also kind of memorized, right? What about other topics? Not favorite. And also, Yulia, you just mentioned that you need to produce the rateable sample. This is so difficult for native and heritage, highly functioning heritage speakers, because the question, okay, опишите своего мужа. Ну, нормальный, умный. So if they're just, this is first their OPI, they cannot go higher than 3 because there is no time for it, right? For the questions. And they just need to explain, like they need this understanding what's happening, because nobody asked them, как выглядит ваш муж? Нет. So they need the warning. If you hear this question, weird question, just try to understand that it's not about you, it's about your skill of this. It's not even about your husband. It's about the language, and they cannot separate themselves from their language. They cannot separate the language from their life. And yeah, that's very difficult for them.
Colleagues, we have a question from Tatiana in the chat and only 3 minutes left. Tatiana, would you like to maybe elaborate on your question if you want to unmute yourself?
First of all, thank you for this very interesting conversation. And my question, I probably should answer it earlier when actually I think you talked about the structure, how structure is important. And I'm just wondering if you noticed that certain modification of the structure may affect the short-term result of the student speech. So for instance, what happens if we include like elements of the OPI questions within the long lesson, for instance? For instance, we start some theme and we do some scaffolding, and then we provide the students to talk about it a little bit, and give the students the opportunity to talk for maybe 2-3 minutes throughout their instructional material.
I feel like that's our goal for any class, right? At least that is definitely one of my goals, to have some time left over for the students to speak. I actually often start my classes with that time, 5 or 7 minutes at the beginning of the class, and it depends on the level. If it's a higher level, then that is actually how we're going to start. I'm going to have several questions or general topic that we discussed last time for the students to talk on at the beginning of this class. This way they review what we talked about, but also kind of get into that mode of speaking. And if it's a lower course, then maybe we would end with that. But for me, that's definitely the goal, to have at least several minutes when the students just talk to each other and I kind of don't really interfere, maybe just, hover somewhere and answer questions.
Yes, but I'm talking about like more like what kind of structure is provided for students for this, not just questions, but maybe some role plays or maybe some other forms of some like mini debates or something like that.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about that. You just mentioned OPI, and OPI definitely doesn't.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite of that, right? OPI is something that where what they say takes us somewhere, and we go where they take us, right? OPIs, I never know what my OPI is going to be about in the end, right? I don't pre-plan it. Do you ladies have ideas?
I think there should be space for speaking in any class. And of course, debates are, since we talk about debates, they are fairly time consuming, and there isn't always enough time in the class to arrange it, especially, if we talk about DLI in the basic course. But I think there are ways to incorporate speaking on maybe, as you mentioned, mini debates into any class, also connecting it to the topic that is being covered, lexical topic that is being covered in class, or even grammatical topic for that matter. So just approaching it creatively, and maybe setting time in the curriculum or in the syllabus, in the weekly plan for this type of activity, maybe doing it once a week. Giving students an opportunity to share their opinions and to practice language that they're learning in class, or maybe having some kind of extracurricular activity, some kind of a debate club where students meet monthly or bi-weekly to practice speaking. I think that would also be a great way to incorporate it into their semester.
Yeah, actually, what I meant is if you notice the difference between, for instance, given the students to opportunities to debate as a separate class after more serious grammatically structured lessons, and or including it into maybe every 20-30 minutes.
We have we have different structure, we have different aspects, and we have separately grammar classes, reading, listening, and interpreting, and speaking classes. So it's like kind of, if it is speaking class, so it's fully for speaking. If I do my reading class or listening comprehension, I also focus on speaking as a production skill, but also like to combine and balance reading, listening, and speaking. Like I go into grammar if it only useful for speaking. For example, if we are going through like the topic, whatever topic, right? It just, I'm trying to tell them the functional grammar, how like dative or genitive is more colloquial than nominative and instrumental. So that's kind of thing. So they have clear understanding this grammar. If they're okay, so our students are highly taught grammar, like their grammar lessons are numerous and they can explain grammar like better than all the teachers, but they need clear understanding. If it is colloquial, I need to use this case, and if it is like научный стиль, I need instrumental and nominative. It's more like English, like structure, subject, verb, object. Then у меня есть и мне хочется something like this. So it's more functional approach to grammar.
Thank you.
I'm afraid we're
I
really
can-
gonna have to end
Oh,
here. I'm so sorry.
We're done.
Katie.
It's fine.
We're just running a little bit behind, and there is a larger celebration coming in about 10 minutes. So I wanted to thank all my colleagues and everyone who joined us today for this conversation. Thank you everyone for joining ACTR. I guess we're closing with this session, at least we're closing the sessions, but we are going to continue celebrating ACTR in just about 10 minutes in the main session. So please join us there.